Hello, Kriegsspielers. It's umpire LaFondios. We're going to do an after-action report for a game I just played. I'm going to focus on the concept of in order to. Before we embark, let's get a warning from the field general.
Well, that is just your opinion, sir.
That's right. Everything I express here is my opinion only. I don't pretend to be an expert on Kriegsspiel, on tactics. These are just lessons that I learned with some of the things that occurred to me during a game. So I could be completely wrong, and I'm happy to hear alternative perspectives. And I am often wrong. So I want to set the tone a little bit around levels of goals in a game. And usually, not always, but usually there's a situational goal in a scenario that's usually defined by something that's described in the scenario by the campaign, but the whole force is trying to do a thing. And so that doesn't change during the game because that's your situational goal. But inside the game, there are multiple levels of goals that can change. So let's talk through three levels of goals. And don't get hung up on the unit size. Just know, as we talk about this, that generally these are the three levels that you see in a game, at least from what I've seen. So there's a CIC level, and that's the Kriegspieler on one side or the other who is running the whole show. And they're basically in charge of achieving the overall goal set by the situational objective. And what they're really doing is positioning core to achieve this outcome. So in an example of the Grand Waterloo game, you had the English and the Prussians trying to come together so that they could defeat the French, or the French trying to defeat the English prior to the Prussians coming on board. What the English and Prussians didn't know whether the French were going to go for the Prussians first or the English. And ultimately, all of the disposition of the forces at the core level was trying to achieve some level of focus and decision. And so it was like big blocks of soldiers in place to smash against each other to achieve some outcome. So that's the CIC's goal. The core commanders down at that next level are really trying to remain flexible with their core because they have a pretty broad mission. So going back to the Grand Waterloo idea, the 6th French Corps, for example, was over in the Prussian sector, one corps to hold off the whole Prussian army as the French tried to achieve decision on the other board. So that corps commander had to move his brigades in such a way that he could try to achieve that objective. So we had a lot of flexibility that he needed. Finally, at the brigade level, it's really about moving regiments to win. That's pulling your damaged regiments out. It's the screenshot level. There's explosions, there's smoke, there's all kinds of the action stuff. And in my opinion, the fact that we look at screenshots at the regimental level tends to draw all the focus down to the brigade goal. And so you'll find kind of funny things like CICs directing guns, things like that. But I think that's more about the medium of Kriegsspiel than anything else. So as we started this game, I was given the courtesy of an invite by one of the players, which was I was gratified to have. And they gave me a briefing document that had an arrow with all the units in the direction they wanted the units to go, with a few additional kind of instructions on there. But nowhere on that document, there's no fault of it, it was just something that wasn't there based on the limitation of the document, was there in order to. Nowhere did it say, this is what we're trying to achieve. And so the idea is that when you give a very specific instruction, like march down that road to the crossroads, if you append onto the end of it an in order to statement, you provide the person doing that action some context. So if the situation is changes, they still know what you were trying to achieve, and they might be able to achieve it anyway. So in the first instance, I didn't have that in order to. And I hadn't had a chance to coordinate with the corps commander, who was my commander. In fact, I didn't even know who they were because I was late to the game, which was a fault of mine. And my wife would give me a call. I had to hear about all sorts of interesting things. She takes priority even over the field general. So it made me late to the game. And when I got there, my soldiers were moving, and I had that fantastic Kriegsspiel experience of you kind of come into consciousness on a horse. There's 3,000 soldiers behind you. You don't know where you're going, what you're doing, or who you report to. So, but in this case, it was my fault. But anyway, so I sent the dispatch to the corps commander. Corps commander is a very skilled player. So I will talk about a player if they're great. And this corps commander got back to me immediately and said, bring your brigade up and meet with me at this location. And I did that. He immediately filled me in on everything in a co-location discussion. And so the overall goal was we were moving east to engage with the enemy. By the way, taking a step back, what I've done is I've abstracted all of the information out of these slides so that because this is a live game, I don't want anyone to pull any information out that might affect that live game. So we're just talking about the abstract concepts here. So I've changed the directions, the colors, the size of the units, and everything. So don't worry about that. So generally the move east and engage with the enemy and keep them tied up, basically, was the overall goal. And then the next level down, his goal was he wanted to make sure that the unit stayed steady. So he wanted me to form a reserve, and he wanted a reserve-focused organization because he gave me an in order to statement. He said, because these troops are a little shakier, they're not veterans, so we have to be mindful that they're going to break faster than a veteran unit, which was an excellent in order to because it immediately gave me context. So I did what a brigade commander does. I moved my regiments up and formed that reserve. So verbally, I got the in order to, I got the direction, everything was great. So next, it was time for me to move forward, take up the reins of battle, and then that brigade that had been fighting for a while could move back and reconstitute and rally. And an interesting thing occurred. The CIC level player showed up and was co-located with myself and the corps commander. So I had a ringside seat to a debate that emerged about the nature of what was happening across the whole battlefield. And if you look at my screenshots from the game, I was just adjusting regiments. It was actually nearly administrative in terms of move a gun here, pull a damaged regiment out there, push a fresh one in, etc. So it's not real kind of high level tactical work, but necessary work. Happy to do it. What was happening in my co-location was that the CAC level player was saying, look, I'm looking at a broader perspective. You are outnumbered. You need to preserve this command or we're going to get wiped out. And the corps commander was basically saying, no, we're fine. We're holding up. We have this reserve system. We're going to fight right here. And so remember, this is a 5-hour game. And so this kind of seesawing discussion went on for much of the game. And the two of them never really came to a synthesis of viewpoint. Nothing negative about the situation. It was just they had different perspectives on the viewpoint and never really came down to a synthesis of an in order to statement. And so what it became about an argument of, are we going to lose our position and lose men or not? So I thought that was interesting just watching it. And what I was doing as I was listening in, it was kind of adjusting regiments and continuing this fight. It was going okay. So we were lucky that day. Finally, the corps commander had to leave. I'm sorry, the CIC had to leave to go check another part of the battlefield, which is what CICs do. So off he went. And I developed a rapport with the corps commander, and he was giving me instructions, and I would either ask him or he'd give the in order to. So he'd say, go move your brigade north, in this case, and attack the weak line there. Let's see if we can push that back. And I would ask, what do you want to do? Or he'd say, because I want to stop them with a spoiling attack. And we just had a discussion about that. And so because he and I were together, we were able to go back and forth. And so I was able to get the direct instruction as well as the in order to. So we had good rapport, and I was moving the regiments forward, and I moved them forward, and we conducted the attack. But then what happened was the in order to element of the instruction dropped away because he had to go to a different part of the line. So we got news on another part of the line of an event that we needed to take care of. He said, okay, you got this under control. He rode away. And because we'd had such a good back and forth, or for whatever reason, we just didn't share an in order to. He just basically said, keep attacking. I said, Roger, I got it. I failed to ask what happens if, right? It was just the heat of the moment. It was totally fine. And something unprecedented happened. The attack succeeded far more than either one of us probably expected. And the unit broke and kind of faded off to the north. And I was in a position where the umpire made the specific statement and kind of made the point, there's nobody in front of you. It's wide open. So I had opened a gap in the enemy line where one had not been before. And because I had such good rapport with the corps commander and we've been sharing our thoughts on the actions up to that time. And because at the exact wrong moment we failed to share that in order to statement, I was faced with a decision where I didn't really have the context of what he was trying to achieve. And it just literally, the timing of it just happened that way. So I could either have gone north, pushed hard there, or remained attached to my sibling brigade and essentially pushed my way south to take up that fight. And so my thought process was, well, I know the CIC level is to keep this whole enemy force engaged for as long as possible. If I push into this gap and create a real problem for the enemy, they're going to have to deploy reserves. It's going to really kind of get in their head a bit. And this might really achieve something at the Army level. So this is kind of an interesting opportunity. And I was thinking maybe the northward push is the play to make. However, if I did that, I would create danger for the Corps because I wouldn't be connected to my sibling brigade. So it's a risky, it could have a high payoff, but it has high risk. And just because the Corps commander and I hadn't had the chance to really touch base on this scenario, I didn't have the context. So I wanted to be a good team player, and I wanted to be a good subordinate commander, and I wanted to make sure I did what was best for the Corps and then the Army, et cetera. But I just had this moment of, gee, what do I do? So if we had just taken that extra moment, the two of us, and explored the in order two, either by me asking about it or him stating it, it would have been a little clearer what to do in that circumstance. However, the good news is the Corps commander is skilled. He came back before I embarked on the attack to the north, which I was leaning toward. He said, no, we can't really create enough momentum here because we're heavily engaged across the whole front. Head to the south, let's consolidate, and let's support the Army that way. So it all worked out in that case, and all was well. But I did have that one moment that I thought was very instructive, because when anyone commands, your subordinate commanders oftentimes won't have the benefit of you being there. So the in order to maintains that context in your absence so that they can make decisions that are in accordance with your wishes, so you don't find them kind of running off in a direction based on them doing what they thought was the best thing to do. So you make your subordinates better team players by creating the teams in order to. And it's a very simple technique. It's you give as specific an order as you want, march down that road to the crossroads, and then you add in order to deny the enemy the crossroads, in order to attack the enemy to the north or whatever, right? So what this does then is it gives that subordinate commander the flexibility to act in accordance with your wishes. So I hope this was helpful. I certainly learned a lot from it, and was gratified to play with some great players. And I hope you learned a little bit from this after action review. We'll see you out there on the game board. Thanks so much.